It started like most forgettable weekends. I had just moved into a small one-bedroom apartment on the far edge of a city called Pinebrook. It wasn't the nicest place I'd ever lived, but it was cheap, quiet, and close enough to my new job that I could walk if my old car finally gave out. The apartment complex itself was oddly placed, tucked smack in the middle of a neighborhood that looked like it had been built in the late 80s. Rows of well-kept houses with trimmed lawns, porch swings, and faded basketball hoops, all surrounding this out-of-place brick complex like it had been dropped from the sky by mistake. I hadn't really explored the area much yet, but when my best friend Laurel came to visit for the weekend, I figured it was the perfect excuse. "Want to hit some thrift stores?" she asked, kicking off her sneakers and flopping onto my beat-up couch like she lived there. "I'm in the mood to dig through old junk and pretend it's treasure." "God, yes," I said, laughing. "I need new dishes and Goodwill never disappoints." That Saturday, we spent most of the afternoon bouncing between thrift stores, consignment shops, and a little antique mall that smelled like dust and lemon polish. Laurel found a weird ceramic clown she swore she had to have, and I got a set of mismatched plates for $5. By the time we finished our third iced coffee of the day, we were both still riding the high of potential treasure hunting. "I swear we're going to find a haunted mirror one day," Laurel joked as we pulled into the apartment parking lot. "Like one that whispers Latin backwards or something." I rolled my eyes. "You wish?" She grinned and pointed through the windshield. "Hey, what's that?" Just ahead, at the corner where my street curved into the main road, was a makeshift yard sign planted into the ground. From the car, it looked like one of those political ones people forgot to take down after the elections. But when we drove closer, we saw it had a piece of white paper taped over it, handwritten in all caps with a black Sharpie. "Sale, 84 Butler Avenue." Someone had tried to tape it with what looked like duct tape in random spots, like they were in a rush or just didn't care. The sign flapped a little in the breeze, looking sad and half falling apart. "That's a weird vibe," I said. "But hey, maybe they've got furniture." "We're in junk hunting mode," Laurel said, rubbing her hands together dramatically. "Let's go." The rain started just as we stepped out of the apartment. It wasn't heavy, just that lazy, spitting kind of rain that darkens the sidewalk and makes everything smell like wet leaves. We grabbed hoodies instead of umbrellas and figured we'd take the short walk to 84 Butler and check it out. The neighborhood was quiet. A couple of cars passed by and one older man across the street was mowing his lawn, even with the drizzle starting. Laurel pointed out a house with Halloween decorations still up, even though it was late November. "Bold choice," she said. "Skeleton Santa is a vibe." We laughed, but when we turned onto Butler Avenue, the mood shifted. The houses here were spaced a little farther apart, older, no lights on, even though it was getting dark fast. The rain started coming down just a little harder, and I remember thinking, I should have brought an umbrella anyway. We reached the house, 84 Butler, and right away something felt off. "This the place?" Laurel asked, squinting at the numbers painted on the curb. "Yeah." I checked the mailbox just to be sure. "This is it." The house didn't have a garage, which was our first red flag. No tables out front, no racks of clothes, no sign of anything that even resembled a yard sale. The only thing in the driveway was a silver sedan with a faded "for sale" sign taped to the inside of the windshield. Not a yard sale, a car sale. "Guess they packed up," Laurel offered. "Rain might have scared them off." "Maybe." I took a step closer, and that's when I saw it. There was a piece of paper taped to the front door, like a printer page, with all caps typed across it. "Sale is inside, come on in." I stopped. "That's weird, right?" Laurel frowned. "Like, not just weird, super weird. Who invites strangers inside for a sale?" Below that sign was another paper. It was wrinkled and barely taped on, flapping in the breeze. It looked like an official document, yellowed with a seal or stamp on the top corner. I couldn't read much of it because it was in Spanish, but I recognized the words notificación and desalojo. "Is that an eviction notice?" I asked. Looks like it, Laurel said, her voice lower now. I stepped onto the porch to get a better look through the front window. The glass was smeared with dust and water streaks, but I could make out what looked like a completely empty living room. No couch, no TV, no boxes, just blank carpet and a leaning stack of newspapers near the corner. The kitchen, barely visible in the background, was also barren. Not even a dish towel on the oven. That house was not lived in. This doesn't feel right, I said, backing off the porch. Let's go. Laurel nodded quickly. Yeah, let's. But as we turned to leave, the door creaked open. We froze. The door didn't swing wide, just a few inches, like someone inside had nudged it open and then stopped. I didn't hear any footsteps, no voices, no creaking floorboards, just the quiet tap of rain on the roof and the faint hiss of cars in the distance. Laurel, I whispered, let's go, right now. She didn't need convincing. We speed-walked halfway back to the apartment before she finally said, "Did you hear anything? Like, anyone inside?" I shook my head. Nothing. I didn't even see anyone. But the door opened. I know. We didn't talk about it much after that. Just made popcorn, put on a dumb horror movie, and tried to laugh it off. But even though Laurel left the next morning, the weird feeling stuck with me. I drove past 84 Butler the next day, and the day after. Each time, the house looked exactly the same. No lights, no movement, no sign of anyone living there. But the sale inside sign was still on the door. And on the third day, I noticed something else. There was another sign, smaller, newer, taped to a streetlight down the block. Final day, everything must go, 84 Butler Avenue. Someone was still trying to get people to go inside. I called the non-emergency police line that night. I didn't know what to say at first. Hi, yeah. There's a sketchy house with fake yard sale signs and a maybe eviction notice. The dispatcher was polite but dismissive. We'll send someone to check it out. I don't know if they ever did. But that night, as I sat in my living room reading, I heard something faint. 3 knocks. Not at my door, at the glass sliding door in the kitchen that led to the back patio. I froze. My apartment backed up to a small patch of woods. No sidewalks. No reason for anyone to be back there. I didn't have the courage to check until nearly 20 minutes later. When I finally pulled the curtain back, no one was there. But taped to the outside of the glass, flimsy, rain-smeared, was a piece of printer paper. Sale, inside, 84 Butler AV. I moved out 2 weeks later. I never found out who was putting up those signs. I don't know if the house was ever condemned or if the city did anything. I never went back to that street. Didn't even want to drive near it. But sometimes I wonder, was someone squatting there? Luring people in? Maybe for theft. Maybe worse. Or maybe the house wasn't abandoned at all. Maybe it was waiting for someone who wouldn't ask questions. Someone who would just step inside. I always thought a yard sale would be a chill way to declutter. I'd seen them 100 times growing up. Families laying out used crock-pots, old DVDs, and bags of clothes on folding tables, while neighbors wandered in sipping coffee. It seemed harmless, casual, even kind of social. I never imagined mine would turn into one of the scariest experiences of my life. But then again, nothing about that summer was normal. I was 25, fresh out of a breakup that left me exhausted, angry, and eager to start over. I'd lived in the same small house in Elmdale, a quiet working-class town just outside St. Louis, for 3 years. It was the kind of place where everyone knew the neighbors, at least by sight. But I hadn't grown up there, and I never quite clicked with the community. After everything with my ex ended, I made the decision to move to Kansas City for a new job, and hopefully, a quieter head. The yard sale was supposed to be the first step. I spent the whole week cleaning out closets, dragging old furniture into the garage, labeling boxes. I set it for a Saturday morning in early August, One of those muggy Midwest days when the heat sits on your skin like a damp towel. By 7:30 a.m., I had tables set up across the driveway and part of the yard. I'd even made coffee and set out bottled water for the early birds. My best friend Carly was supposed to come help, but her kid woke up with a fever that morning, so I figured I'd be fine on my own. That was mistake number 1. By 8 o'clock, people started trickling in, mostly older folks, a few families with kids tugging at plastic toys, a couple of women looking through my box of novels. I chatted, haggled, made change, and even got a few compliments on my setup. It actually felt nice. Peaceful, even. Then around 9:45, she showed up. She was probably in her mid-40s, dressed in black leggings and a loose floral top, her hair tied up in a messy bun. She moved with purpose, straight toward the table where I had my designer items laid out. Scarves, a purse or two, a jewelry box, and one very specific pair of sandals. They were strappy leather wedges with gold buckles. Brand new, never worn, still in the box with the tags attached. Retail, somewhere between $220 and $300. My ex, let's call him Travis, had brought them back from some business trip in Vegas. Turns out that business trip involved more drinking and cheating than actual work. I found that out 3 days later when someone sent me photos of him with a woman at a casino. I never wore the sandals, couldn't even look at them without getting a tight knot in my stomach. So I put them out for $5. Yeah, it was petty, but I wanted someone to get a steal, someone who deserved a steal, and for those shoes to be gone forever. The woman picked up the box and opened it slowly, like she was expecting a trap to spring. Her eyes lit up when she saw the shoes. $5, she asked. Yep, I said. Brand new, never worn. She hesitated. I give you 2. I blinked. Sorry, price is firm. Come on, she said, her tone sharpening. You won't get 5, they're not even that nice. They retail for over $200, I said, trying to stay calm. You're getting a deal. She narrowed her eyes at me. Then why are you selling for 5? Something wrong with them? Nope, I said, forcing a smile. Just don't need them anymore. She scoffed and turned the box over, inspecting the soles like she was looking for damage. I crossed my arms, trying not to let my annoyance show. Other people were browsing, watching the interaction out of the corners of their eyes. I give you $2.50, she said. It's 5, I said, voice a little firmer. Sorry. She stared at me for a second. Then she snapped. She slammed the box shut and threw it back onto the table so hard the sandals flew out. You think you better than me? She shouted. You think I don't know shoes? Heads turned. People froze. Ma'am, please, I began. Don't you ma'am me, you skinny little bitch, she said, loud and harsh, her accent thickening. You think I can't buy these? You think I need your charity? I was stunned, completely thrown off. All I could do was try to stay calm. I think we're done here, I said. She cursed at me in a language I didn't recognize, eyes blazing, spitting the words like venom. Then she turned and stomped off down the street. I stood there, shaking slightly, trying to gather my composure. A couple of women near the jewelry table murmured, "What the hell?" And she was nuts. Someone helped me pick up the sandals. I wanted to pack up right then, but I'd only made about $60. I still had a lot to sell. I took a deep breath and kept going. That was mistake number 2. About 15 minutes later, I saw her again. She was coming up the sidewalk, fast, dragging a man behind her. He was enormous, probably 6 feet 4 inches, broad shoulders, thick neck, wearing a stained gray t-shirt and camo shorts. His expression was blank, until he saw me. Then it twisted into something cold. They walked straight up to the table, right up to me, and stopped. You the one trying to rip off my wife? He barked. I what? I said, stunned. He stepped closer. You trying to sell my wife some broken-ass shoes for $5? After disrespecting her like that? I didn't disrespect anyone, I said, backing up a little. She tried to offer me $2. I said no. That's it. She told me you embarrassed her. You humiliated her in front of people. She screamed at me. I said, voice rising. He slammed his palm down on the table, rattling a ceramic mug. You think you're funny? At this point, other shoppers were backing away. I saw one mom gather her 2 kids and practically run to her car. The woman, his wife, was now grabbing the sandal box off the table again, trying to yank it out of my hands. You don't want no trouble, the man growled. Give her the damn shoes. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think. I'm 5 feet 3 inches and maybe 120 pounds. This guy could have crushed me. And I was suddenly very aware of the fact that no one else had stepped in. Except, someone did. Hey! A voice shouted. 2 women, strangers, walked up from across the street. One was already holding up her phone, camera recording. The other had hers ready to dial. Back off, one of them said. We're calling the cops. The man froze, eyes flicking to the camera. You serious right now? He hissed. Dead serious, the woman said. Walk away. He glared at me one last time, then grabbed his wife by the wrist and pulled her away. She screamed something at me over her shoulder, but I couldn't even register the words. They crossed the street, got into an old black Suburban, and peeled away. I packed up everything immediately after that. Didn't wait for the noon crowd, didn't care about the rest of the stuff. The 2 women who'd helped me stuck around until I finished loading things into the garage. I thanked them about 100 times, and we shared a shaky laugh about garage sale horror stories. But inside I felt sick. Later that night I kept thinking about what might have happened if they hadn't stepped in. If no one had pulled out a phone. If that man had decided $5 was worth hurting someone over. I've never had another garage sale since. And I never will. Because no matter how many people say, it's just some weirdos, or you got unlucky, I know now how fast things can spiral. How unpredictable people can be when they feel insulted or challenged. I sold the sandals online later that week. Got $90 for them. But that $5? That was almost the most expensive mistake of my life. I hadn't planned to host a yard sale until I ran out of space in my tiny 2-bedroom rental on the west side of Elmsworth. Between leftover college furniture, boxes from my last move I never unpacked, and stuff I hadn't touched in months, maybe years, it felt like the house was closing in on me. I wasn't a hoarder, not really, just busy. Working 2 jobs didn't leave much time for decluttering. I'd finally set a Saturday aside in mid-May. The weather had just started warming up for real, and I figured people would be more willing to browse outside. I posted signs on the community board at the grocery store, a few Facebook yard sale groups, and one on Nextdoor. I didn't expect much, but the response was better than I thought. The night before, I stayed up late pricing everything with masking tape and a Sharpie. Clothes, mismatched dishes, old Bluetooth speakers, books, 2 lamps, a coffee table I never used, and, after some serious hesitation, my PS4. I loved that console, but I hadn't touched it in almost 8 months. Work, bills, and life had buried my free time under an avalanche of stress. I set it out anyway, pricing it high, $250 with 2 controllers and 6 solid games. It was the kind of price meant to discourage buyers unless they were really committed. If someone paid it, I wouldn't argue. By 6:30 a.m., I had everything set up on folding tables in my driveway. My place was on a quieter side street near a park, but traffic picked up early on weekends. People trickled in, the early birds who hunt for treasures like it's a sport. They were mostly older folks, sweet, polite, the usual banter about, oh my, remember these? They picked up a few mugs, some books, a blanket. The PS4 drew attention, but no one bit. Around 9 a.m., she showed up. She came alone, walking up from the street. Late 30s, maybe early 40s, pale skin, ash blonde hair tucked into a huge floppy sun hat. She wore oversized sunglasses that completely hid her eyes. Something about her posture was stiff, unnatural. She wasn't relaxed like most shoppers. She moved with purpose. "Morning," I offered casually. She didn't respond. She zeroed in on the gaming stuff immediately, like she'd seen my post online and came just for that. There was a short stack of PS4 and Xbox games laid out beside the console. She picked them up one by one, flipping them over like she knew what she was doing. "These are $10 each?" she asked, voice flat. "Yep," I said, "all in good condition." She made a sound between a scoff and a laugh. "You know these are ancient, right?" I shrugged. "They still sell for more at GameStop." "It's a yard sale," she snapped, like she was personally offended. "I'm not giving them away," I replied, firm but calm. I could feel my stomach twist a little. Her tone was more hostile than the usual haggling. She put the games down, hard, like she wanted to break the cases. "You're price gouging, that's what this is," she muttered, "taking advantage of people." I didn't respond. I was starting to feel uneasy. She turned abruptly, muttering under her breath, then said loud enough for me to hear, "No one's going to buy your overpriced junk. That PS4 is going to sit there until it's rotting." Then she walked off. I didn't say anything. I just wanted her gone. Her attitude had left a weird, greasy film on the morning, and I hoped that was the last I'd see of her. But I noticed her again about 20 minutes later, walking down the sidewalk across the street, then circling the block. She passed my house 3 times over the next hour. No eye contact, just walked. I tried to shake it off. Maybe she lived nearby. Maybe she was just going on a walk. People are weird sometimes. The rest of the day was normal. I sold the coffee table, a bunch of books, and the lamps. A teenager asked about the PS4, said he'd come back later with cash, but never did. By 3 p.m., I started packing up. That night, I was tired. I made boxed mac and cheese and crashed on the couch, scrolling on my phone with the TV playing quietly in the background. Around 11:30, I turned everything off and headed to bed. And that's when I heard the sound. It was soft. A metallic clink. Then again, clink. Clink. Like something lightly tapping metal. I froze in the hallway. My living room light was still off, but I crept to the front window and peeked out. Nothing. But something felt wrong. I walked to the kitchen, toward the side of the house. The side door, rarely used, was just past the laundry nook. I didn't turn on the porch light, just peeked through the curtain of the small square window. And there she was, the woman from earlier, Ugyanaza Napsamu. Same sunglasses, even at night. Kneeling by the door with something in her hand, working at the lock. For a second, I thought my heart stopped. My first instinct was to call the police, but then I panicked. What if she got in before they arrived? What if she had a weapon? But she looked ridiculous, like a suburban mom playing spy. Still, someone was trying to break into my house. My hands shook as I reached for the old aluminum baseball bat I kept behind the kitchen door. My ex had left it behind, and I never moved it. I crept to the side window again, heart pounding. She hadn't gotten the door open yet, but she was still trying. I yanked the curtain aside and banged on the glass. "Hey!" She jolted upright, dropped something metal, a pin or pick or whatever it was, and stared at me through the glass. "If you don't leave right now," I shouted through the window, "I swear to God I will come out there and crack your skull open." Her face didn't move. No fear, no guilt. She just looked at me. And then, just like that, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I double-checked every lock in the house. I didn't report it. I couldn't explain why. Maybe part of me didn't want to deal with the cops, or maybe I just thought it would make things worse. The day went on. I worked a half shift at the diner, tried to forget about it. That night, I placed a chair under the doorknob and slept with the bat beside me. No sounds, no visitors, but things weren't over. The third night after the yard sale, I came home from work to find one of my recycling bins moved. It had been placed directly in front of the side door like someone had stood on it. There were scuff marks on the door frame just below the lock. I installed a camera the next day. Cheap, off Amazon, but good enough. I pointed it directly at the side door, and that night, again, at 12:17 a.m., the footage showed movement. The same woman, same hat, same glasses. This time she didn't try the door. She just stood there, for nearly 6 minutes. Just stood there. Her hands were at her sides. She didn't move. Then she walked away. I finally called the police. The officer was polite but clearly skeptical. "You know her?" he asked. "Number she came to my yard sale and got pissed about the prices. That's it." He raised an eyebrow. "And you think she's targeting you because of video games?" I felt stupid saying it. But it was true. They took a report, but nothing came of it. I gave them the footage. They promised to patrol the neighborhood more frequently, but for the next 2 weeks, every few nights, she'd return. Always between midnight and 1 a.m. Always in the same outfit, never speaking, never trying to get in again, just watching. Then, one night, she wasn't alone. The camera picked up movement at 12:39 a.m. First her, then a second figure, taller, wearing a dark hoodie. He stood at the edge of the frame while she walked up to the side door. This time, she reached into her bag and pulled out a spray bottle. The next morning, I found something written in faint red letters across the door. "Thieves burn." That was the last straw. I left town that afternoon, staying with my cousin across the river. When I returned 3 days later, everything was quiet. The woman never came back. Neither did the man. But to this day, I don't know who she was, what she really wanted, or how far she would have gone. All I know is this: I kept the PS4, and I never had another yard sale again. I never thought a lazy Saturday morning would lead me into something I couldn't explain, much less escape. It was late January, the kind of gray, overcast morning where the world feels quiet and slow. I had just moved to a small town outside Asheville, North Carolina, Stillwater, population barely scraping 5,000. I was staying in a fixer-upper my aunt had left behind after moving to Florida, and most of my days were spent patching drywall, painting, and trying to make the place feel less like a forgotten time capsule. I wasn't looking for anything in particular when I spotted the handwritten "Yard Sale Today" sign while driving home from the hardware store. The arrows pointed down a winding road leading into an older neighborhood, mostly modest ranch homes and creaky porches sagging under years of weight. I figured, why not? I needed a break, and maybe I'd find something interesting for the house. The sale was run by a tired-looking woman in her late 50s, bundled in a thick green cardigan. She stood beside a folding table covered in the usual garage sale fare: chipped mugs, old holiday decor, dusty VHS tapes. I gave her a polite nod and started browsing. That's when I saw it. The mirror. It leaned awkwardly against a tree, almost like someone had set it aside intentionally. The frame was dark oak, carved with intricate spirals and floral designs. It was tall, about 5 feet, and heavy-looking with that aged glass that makes everything inside look slightly warped, like an old photograph. "You like it?" the woman called out when she noticed me staring. I never really cared for the thing. My sister left it behind when she passed. There was something in her tone. Flat, dismissive, not sadness, just detachment. "It's beautiful," I said, stepping closer. "If you buy anything else, you can just take that," she added. Honestly, I'd rather not pack it back up. I bought a ceramic bowl and a reading lamp for $10, mostly out of guilt. She helped me load the mirror into the back of my Jeep. "Be careful with it," she muttered, almost as an afterthought. Back home, I set it in the dining room, leaning it carefully against the wall while I decided where it might go long term. I didn't plan to hang it yet. I'd need stronger anchors, but I wanted to clean it up first. I got out some glass cleaner and paper towels, humming to myself as I worked. The dining room lights flickered once, then again. I glanced up, mildly annoyed. The house wiring had been spotty since I moved in. Nothing new. What was new, though, was the way my cats reacted. Knox and Luna, my two rescue cats, had always been curious but calm. Now they were crouched near the edge of the hallway, ears flat, staring at the mirror. Not playing, not running, just watching. "Knox," I said gently. "It's just a mirror, bud." He didn't move. That night I had the first nightmare. In the dream, I was standing in front of the mirror, only it wasn't in my house anymore. It was in a large, unfamiliar room filled with antique furniture covered in white sheets. The air felt heavy, like a storm was coming. My reflection blinked a second too late. When I woke up, my heart was pounding, and I couldn't remember what had come after the blink. Just that something had changed, and it felt wrong. Over the next week, I started noticing small things. Shadows where there shouldn't be any. The shape of a person behind me in the reflection. But when I turned, the room was empty. Once I watched the mirror closely while brushing my teeth across the hall. The reflection in the mirror moved slightly after I did. A delay. Subtle, but real. "Maybe you're just stressed," my friend Kelsey suggested when I told her over the phone. "New place, lots of change. Our brains do weird stuff." "I know what I saw," I said. "It's not just me. The cats won't even go in the dining room anymore." She paused. "You want me to come stay a night or two?" "Number, it's probably nothing," I lied. But I couldn't ignore it anymore when I came home one evening and found the mirror moved. It hadn't fallen. It was still upright, but it was now several inches from the wall. No sign of a struggle, no paw prints, no scuffs on the floor. Just moved. I decided to put a blanket over it, out of sight, out of mind. But by morning, the blanket was gone. Not just on the floor, gone. I found it later that day in the laundry room, inside the dryer. I hadn't done laundry in 2 days. That night, I had the dream again. This time, my reflection didn't move at all. I waved my hands. Nothing. I leaned in close, and it suddenly smiled at me. I woke up screaming. When my dad came to visit the following weekend, I didn't mention the mirror, but he noticed it on his own. "Where'd you get that thing?" he asked, peering into it with a frown. "Yard sale," I said. "Why?" He stepped back. "I don't know, just gave me a weird feeling." That evening, while we were watching a movie, he glanced toward the hallway and muttered, "Swear I just saw someone walk past that damn mirror." I moved it into the hallway closet, propped it up and shut the door. That helped for a while, until it didn't. Late at night I'd hear soft knocking sounds, then the sound of something scraping like nails dragging along glass. Once I found the hallway closet open. The mirror was still there, but the door had been unlatched. I hadn't touched it in days. The worst was a week ago. I was cooking in the kitchen, the stovetop hissing as onions sizzled in a pan, when I heard a knock behind me. Not a casual tap, a sharp, deliberate knock. I turned around, expecting to see someone at the kitchen window, but I live on the second story. There's no balcony, no fire escape, just empty air beneath that window. I stood frozen, spatula in hand, and stared at the glass. Nothing. No face, no movement. But I felt something. This cold, hollow awareness crawling up my spine. That night I made a listing online. Vintage antique mirror, free with pickup. I didn't mention why. I just wanted it gone. But it didn't sell. A few people asked about it, but no one showed up. Then the dreams got worse. Every night now I'm back in that room. The furniture with the white sheets, the still air, the mirror in the center. And now the reflection doesn't just smile. It talks. It whispers things I don't understand, scratching, rasping words that echo even after I wake up. And I always wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, feeling like someone was just in the room with me. I don't know if it's the mirror that's haunted, or if I am now. Yesterday I tried to destroy it. I dragged it out to the yard with the plan to smash it with a hammer. But when I stood over it, I hesitated. The reflection didn't match the sky behind me. It was darker, like the glass was a window to somewhere else entirely. And for a brief moment, I swear it moved. Someone in the mirror leaned closer. I dropped the hammer, ran inside. I don't know what to do anymore. Part of me thinks if I toss it, whatever this is will follow me. Another part says I've already waited too long. This morning, I found something carved into the inside of my bathroom mirror. Not written with lipstick or marker. Carved. 3 words. Let me out. I don't think this is just an object anymore. I think something's attached. Something ancient. Angry. Something that saw me the moment I laid eyes on it at that yard sale. And I don't know how to make it stop. It started with a simple sign. White cardboard, red paint, letters a bit uneven but legible enough. Yard sale, Sat Sun, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. An arrow pointed east, where the sun was already making everything look gold and dust-flecked. It was a Saturday morning in late October. My husband Tom and I had just dropped off our recycling in Echo Valley, a little pocket of older neighborhoods just on the edge of the Santadella foothills. The kind of place where every house was different, some still tidy with fresh paint and rock gardens, others sagging into the earth, worn out and left behind. We were both in our mid-30s, married almost a decade, no kids, just the shared hobby of hunting through other people's discarded lives. Estate sales, yard sales, garage cleanouts, whatever you'd call it. It was our weekend ritual. You'd be surprised how many memories you can buy for under $5. Tom was behind the wheel, sipping cold brew from a reused mason jar. Want to follow it? He asked, tapping the steering wheel toward the sign. Yeah, why not? I said, adjusting the canvas tote bag on my lap. It's still early. We turned, the road curling up through dry hills and into the older part of town. Silver pines, a little community barely hanging on, mostly retirees and recluses. Half the homes still had tinsel from last Christmas hanging from their gutters. Others had no trespassing signs or boarded-up windows. We passed a yard with 3 broken-down cars, a rotting RV in the driveway, and a house with a bright yellow door, freshly painted, oddly cheerful. That's where the next sign pointed. Yard sale. 27 Silver Pines Road. Tom slowed and turned. The house was modest. 1 story, faded pale blue siding, cracked concrete steps, a crooked white mailbox leaning out like a drunk. A few folding tables were set up on the patchy front lawn, surrounded by rustling oaks that hadn't turned yet. The air smelled like leaves and something metallic. Old tools, maybe. There was no music, no chatter, just the creak of the breeze and the flutter of a tablecloth. Something about it felt off. But we got out anyway. I always move fast at sales, beating the crowd, scanning quickly, heading for the corners most people ignore. Tom lingers with books and tools. I go for old linens, stationery, sometimes kitchenware. Today, though, I was drawn to the side yard, where a few tables were set up under a crooked poplar tree. That's where I saw them. 4 long tables, all covered in Christmas decorations. Not the cheesy kind you find at big box stores. These were vintage, delicate, some hand-painted, others glittered or frosted, many of them clearly older than either of us. The first table had wall hangings, felt banners with embroidered carolers, wooden plaques with gold foil script, and a carved knoll sign with candle holders built into the lettering. The second table was all tree ornaments, hundreds of them, glass, tin, ceramic. One caught my eye, a tiny glass bell shaped like an angel, its wings curved forward like hands in prayer. I reached to pick it up, but paused. The third table had flat surface decorations, centerpieces, little Christmas village houses, tinsel trees, reindeer with faded red ribbons, and in the center, a Santa figurine. Chrome-like, frosted silver, tall, maybe 10 inches. He was holding a sack in one hand, a lantern in the other, very detailed, almost too real. It was shaking, not vibrating, not wobbling from the wind, shaking, back and forth like it was alive, not violently, but steadily, as if being rocked by unseen hands. I froze. Everything else on the table, snow globes, porcelain deer, pine cone wreaths, sat still as stone. Even the leaves around us had calmed. It was quiet, dead quiet. I looked around. No one. Not a single person in the side yard. No cellar, no shoppers. I couldn't even hear Tom anymore. I squinted and leaned down, watching closely. The Santa wasn't plugged in. It wasn't on a moving platform or spring. And nothing, absolutely nothing, was near enough to cause the movement. I blinked and took a step back. That's when I heard her. "Oh, isn't he beautiful?" said a voice behind me. I turned. An older woman stood there, maybe late 70s. Pale cardigan, dark slacks, gray hair pulled back. Her face had this soft, worn quality, like someone you'd trust instantly. She was smiling, looking down at the Santa figurine. "It's been years since I saw him dance like that," she murmured, eyes glistening. "Dance?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even. Is it motorized?" She chuckled. "Number just full of spirit, I suppose." Then she turned to me, as if just noticing I was there. "He was my husband's favorite. Every year he'd put him on the mantle. Said it looked like Santa was trying to guide him home." She said it so fondly, so naturally, I didn't want to ruin the moment. I nodded, gave a soft smile. "He's beautiful." She reached out and touched one of the ornaments on the table. Her fingers were thin, knotted with age, nails neatly trimmed. "We had so many of these, spent our whole lives collecting. Never had kids, so I guess they're all orphans now. I'm sure someone will take good care of them," I said gently. She smiled again. "That's what I hope." A breeze stirred, lifting the edges of the tablecloths, making the silver Santa finally stop moving. I turned my head, just for a second, toward the tree, the street. When I looked back, she was gone. I scanned the yard, expecting her to have moved to another table, maybe gone inside. Nothing. Only then did I notice how quiet it had gotten again. I made my way around the front yard. Tom was flipping through a milk crate of records near the front steps. "Hey," I said. "Did you see an older lady walk past?" He glanced up. "Nope, just us and the guy inside." I looked toward the house. The door was open. A younger woman, maybe late 20s, sat behind a folding table taking payments. I walked up. "Hey, quick question. Was there an older woman here earlier? Gray hair, cardigan, kind of short?" The girl looked puzzled. "Not that I've seen, just you two since we opened." I frowned. "We were just in the side yard. I talked to her. She said the Santa figurine was her husband's favorite." The girl tilted her head. "Wait, are you talking about the silver Santa on the third table?" I nodded slowly. She paused, reached into a shoebox beside her and pulled out a faded photograph. "Is this her?" It was a photo of the older woman, standing next to the same silver Santa in what looked like the living room of the house. She wore the same cardigan, same smile. I nodded, throat tight. "Yeah, that's her." The girl sighed. "That's my aunt. She died 2 months ago. This was her house." Tom and I didn't stay long after that. We bought one ornament, a small wooden sleigh with tiny metal runners, and I asked again if anyone else had seen the woman. They hadn't. We walked back to the car in silence. When we got in, I finally said, "She was right there, Tom. I talked to her." He didn't doubt me, just nodded. "I believe you." I turned and looked back at the house one last time. The sunlight was brighter now, almost harsh, but the silver Santa on the table, still, finally, seemed to shimmer more than it should. We still go to yard sales, every weekend in fact, but every now and then, when the air is still and the tables are full of stories waiting to be bought, I find myself glancing around, just in case. And sometimes when I see a silver glint or hear a soft chuckle on the wind, I wonder if she's still watching, still hoping someone will take care of what she loved, still coming home for Christmas. I grew up in neighborhoods where people left their doors unlocked and waved at each other from across lawns. The kind of places where you know the names of the kids 3 houses down, where barbecues in the cul-de-sac are just part of summer, and where you don't think twice about lending someone a power drill. When my wife, Emily, and I bought our first home, a modest 3-bedroom in a quiet part of Ridgeville, Ohio, it felt like a continuation of that same life. The streets were wide. The houses all had about half an acre of land, and the neighbors were the kind of people who said hello when you were bringing in the trash cans. We moved in 3 years ago. The garage was one of the selling points for me. Attached to the house, plenty of space for my tools, a workbench, storage for my old mountain bike, and even a second fridge for drinks and overflow groceries. I had always kept things relatively organized, not spotless, but enough that I knew where everything was. That's important later. Our neighborhood has a tradition of yard sales in the summer. Nothing official, just people putting out signs, dragging tables into the driveway, and hoping to get rid of clutter. Emily and I had held one the summer after we moved in. It was a decent turnout, sold a few old lamps and a broken coffee maker. We hadn't done another one since, but we'd go check out others. Usually just for the walk, sometimes we'd pick up a used book or something cheap for the garden. This all started last summer, in late July. It was a Friday afternoon. Emily and I were coming back from lunch, and we saw a few signs posted at the entrance of our neighborhood. Neon green poster board with thick Sharpie, yard sale, 229 Maple Hill. That was only 6 houses down from ours. The man who lived there, Tom Bennett, was someone I'd always gotten along with. Not close friends, but friendly. He helped me bleed my brakes once when I was working on the Civic, and we'd had a couple beers on my back deck after that. He was in his early 50s, retired military, very fix-it type. His wife Karen was sweet and had been to one of Emily's book club meetups. When we saw they were having a sale, Emily nudged me. "Want to check it out? Could use a new rake." I shrugged. "Sure. Let's go see what kind of junk they're getting rid of." It was warm out, a little humid. The kind of day where the sun makes the pavement shimmer and everything smells like hot grass. Tom had tables set up in the driveway, all neatly arranged. Tools, camping gear, some household appliances, a few bins of books and DVDs. A few people were already browsing. I wandered toward the garage where he had some of the bigger items. That's when I saw it. A red and black Husky tool set. Socket wrenches, ratchet, hex keys, all in the hard plastic case with the folding handle. Identical to mine. Same scuffs, same faded look on the bottom left corner of the box. But what made my stomach tighten was the sticker. It was one of those stupid old cartoon stickers, a duck with sunglasses and a hammer saying, "Nailed it," that I had stuck on the underside of the case as a joke years ago. I froze, bent down, picked it up, flipped it over. There it was. That exact sticker, in the exact spot. I hadn't used the set in a while, maybe a month or 2, but I knew I owned this. Not one like it. This exact one. I set it down, didn't say anything right away. Instead, I kept browsing. I saw a digital tire inflator. Same model I had. Still had the same scuff near the nozzle. Same scratches around the buttons. My gut twisted tighter. Then I saw the old shop light I'd kept hanging behind my workbench. Yellow body, black handle, little burn mark on the cord where it melted against a hot pipe once. Emily was chatting with Karen near a table of picture frames. I went over, smiled, tried to act normal. "Hey Tom, big sale." He laughed. "Yeah, trying to clear out the garage a bit. Karen says if I keep collecting tools, I'm gonna have to start sleeping in there." "Ha, yeah." I nodded, my skin crawling. "Some good stuff here." "Take anything you want, I'll cut you a deal," he said. Emily leaned in. "We'll come back tomorrow. I want to check what frames I need for the hallway." We walked back to our house. As soon as we were out of earshot, I said, "That tool set? That was mine." Emily squinted at me. "What?" "I'm serious. It had the sticker on the bottom. That stupid duck one I stuck on as a joke like 4 years ago." "Come on," she said. "You think Tom stole it? Why would he do that?" "I don't know. But that wasn't just similar, it was mine." I walked straight to the garage, opened the side door, started checking the shelves, the workbench. The tool set was gone. So was the air inflator. So was the shop light. "Emily," I called. She walked in, arms folded. I pointed at the space under the workbench. "Right there, that's where it was." She frowned. "Are you sure?" I didn't answer. I was already checking more things. My voltmeter, a spare drill, my older circular saw. Gone. "Maybe you moved them?" she offered. "Or loaned them out?" "I haven't loaned anything since February when I let Chris borrow my ladder. I haven't touched this stuff in weeks." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tom in my garage. Had he really gone into my garage? The next morning, around 10 o'clock, I went back to the sale. Emily stayed home. I walked straight to the tool set. It was still there. $75 on the tag. I had paid $200 when I bought it new. Tom was stacking some books into a bin when he saw me. "Back for the tools?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "About that set. Funny thing, it looks just like mine. Same sticker and everything." He paused. "Huh. Weird. Got that as a gift from my cousin, like a year ago." "You sure?" I asked, "because that sticker's kind of specific." He gave me a blank look. "Yeah, I didn't put that on there. Maybe it came like that. I don't know." My hands clenched. "Tom, that's my set. You took it." His smile dropped. "Excuse me?" "I know it's mine. I'm not guessing. You were in my garage, weren't you?" His jaw tightened. "You need to leave, Adam." "Not until I take my stuff back." "You want to buy it?" he asked, pointing at the tag. "It's $75. Otherwise, get off my driveway." I was stunned. I should have grabbed it and walked. But I didn't. I left. Back home, I sat in the garage again, stared at the empty spots. I had left the side door unlocked. I knew that. The fence gate was barely ever latched. The garage didn't have cameras. Tom had been in there before, once to help with the car, once during a barbecue. He knew the layout. I imagined him slipping in at night, maybe once, maybe a few times, grabbing 1 or 2 things at a time and then selling them to me. The next few days, I avoided him. He didn't come over, didn't wave when he mowed, just kept his head down. I didn't go to the police. I didn't have proof beyond that sticker, and he'd already denied everything. But I changed the locks, installed motion lights, locked the side door. I haven't spoken to him since. That yard sale changed the way I looked at my neighborhood. I used to think I lived in a community. Now I keep a bat behind the garage door, just in case. I was 8 the summer it happened. Back then, Saturdays meant one thing: yard sales. We lived in a small town in Oregon, tucked into the kind of suburb where every third house had a swing set and neighbors waved whether they knew you or not. My mom wasn't rich, but she was crafty, always finding good deals at estate sales, rummage events, or someone's weekend decluttering attempt. And I loved tagging along, especially for the toys. I remember that year so clearly because it was the summer after my dad moved out. Things were quieter in our house, tense sometimes. My mom didn't say much about the divorce, but she was more tired than before, more distracted. That's why I think she started dragging me and my little brother Matthew out of the house every weekend. It was her way of keeping us all busy. This one Saturday, we hit 3 or 4 sales early in the morning. The last one was a big one. A corner house with a sprawling driveway packed with everything from old baby clothes to power tools. There were balloons tied to the mailbox and signs taped to the telephone poles leading up to it. It looked like a small event, not just a regular sale. "Stay close," Mom said, pulling Matthew from the back seat. "I'm not chasing either of you today." "I'll look at the toys," I offered, already eyeing a folding table near the garage where a bunch of plastic bins sat. Matthew whined about wanting juice, and I took the chance to wander ahead. I was old enough to stay within eyesight, and honestly, I liked being on my own. Picking through other people's stuff felt like treasure hunting. I got absorbed pretty quickly. There was a bin full of old action figures, some still sticky with dust. I remember thinking how gross but cool that was. Next to that was a box labeled Games $1 with old DS and Wii titles. I was flipping through them when I heard a voice behind me. "Find anything good?" I turned around. A woman, probably in her late 30s, stood there smiling. She had light brown hair, pulled into a messy bun, and sunglasses on her head. Her t-shirt said "Mom Life" in glittery letters, and she was holding an iced coffee. She looked like any mom. I assumed she was running the sale. "I'm looking at the games," I said. She nodded. "Oh, those are fun. My son used to play those. You know, there's a free box at the end of the driveway. You can pick something if you want." I perked up. Free boxes weren't uncommon. Usually they were filled with random junk, but sometimes you'd find cool old Happy Meal toys, broken electronics, or small figurines. I looked down the driveway. Sure enough, there was a plastic tote sitting near the street, lid off. "Really?" I asked. She smiled again, stepping to the side. "Sure, go ahead. You can take one thing." I didn't think twice. I walked beside her, chatting about some game I saw. She nodded along, sipping her drink. At the time, it didn't feel weird, just someone being nice. Adults were usually polite to kids at these kinds of sales. We got to the bin. There were actually some decent things in there. A couple of board games missing pieces, a stuffed Scooby-Doo, a fidget spinner. I dug around, eventually pulling out a Hot Wheels car that looked new. "I like this one," I said. She bent a little, hands on her knees. "Good choice. Okay, let's bring it to the car." I blinked. "To the car?" "Yeah, just drop it in there. I'll hold on to it for you," she said casually, standing up. "My car's right over there." She pointed down the street to a silver SUV. The engine was already running. I remember thinking that was odd. No one else had their car on. Still, I was 8. I figured she meant she didn't want me to forget it or something. I started walking across the quiet street, the Hot Wheels in my hand. She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away right away. It was like when teachers held your hand during fire drills. But it didn't feel right. I felt it before I heard it. That sudden rush of heat behind my neck. The instinctive feeling something was off. "Isabel." It was my mom's voice. Sharp, angry, scared. I froze. The woman's hand let go. She turned, quick and stiff, and walked straight to the silver SUV. A man was in the driver's seat. I hadn't noticed him before. She got in without a word. The car peeled off. I was still standing in the street when my mom ran up and grabbed me. Her face was white. Her grip on my shoulder was tight. "What the hell are you doing? Who was that woman?" I thought she worked here," I said, confused, looking back at the driveway. Another woman, older, probably the actual seller, was coming toward us. "She didn't belong here," she said to my mom. "I saw her talking to your daughter and felt something was off. That's why I yelled." I remember my mom kneeling, holding my arms. "Did she touch you? Did she say anything else?" I told her everything. The free box, the car, how she said I should bring the toy over. My mom was shaking. I didn't fully get why at the time, but her reaction scared me more than anything else. That night she called the police. We gave a description, they took notes, asked questions, and left. Nothing came of it. We never found out who she was. For weeks I wasn't allowed out of my mom's sight. No more walking ahead at yard sales, no more treasure hunting without her right next to me. I didn't understand the gravity of it until later. It hit me one day, maybe a year later, when I was watching the news and they showed a story about a girl who'd gone missing. Same age, same town, picked up at a garage sale by someone who wasn't supposed to be there. That could have been me. I'm older now, 23, and I still think about that day sometimes. I think about the woman's calm smile, the fact that her coffee cup had a name on it, Lisa, written in black marker, the sunglasses on her head, how ordinary she looked, how normal. That's what scared me the most. I've told the story to friends, even posted about it in a local safety forum once. Every time people react with disbelief. Good thing your mom saw you, or thank God that other lady noticed. But the truth is, if that woman had been a little more patient, a little quieter, a little less eager, if my mom had been distracted for 30 more seconds, my story might have ended very differently. There's a weight to that. Because monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they smile and offer you free toys. For years, Emma and Jacob had dreamed of moving out of the cramped city apartment and into a quieter place. A house with a yard, space to breathe, and a neighborhood that felt safe. So when they finally found a modest 2-story house on Maplewood Lane, a tree-lined suburban street just outside of Crestview, they jumped at the chance. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. The first few months were a whirlwind of unpacking, painting walls, and making the place their own. Emma, a freelance graphic designer, loved how the morning light filtered through the living room windows, while Jacob, who worked in IT, appreciated the garage where he could tinker with his old motorcycle. But settling into a new home meant downsizing. Their clutter from the apartment, boxes of unused gadgets, clothes that no longer fit, old furniture, crowded every corner. Emma suggested a yard sale. "It's the perfect way to clear space and maybe make some extra cash," she said one evening, flicking through local online forums where neighbors announced community sales. Jacob hesitated. What if nothing sells? What if we just waste a weekend? Emma smiled, brushing back a stray lock of hair. It's worth a shot. Plus, we'll meet neighbors and get to know the area better. On a brisk Saturday morning, Emma and Jacob were up before dawn, hauling out folding tables from the garage and setting them up along the driveway. The garage, usually reserved for Jacob's tools and his motorcycle, was transformed into a mini store. Boxes of kitchenware, books, toys, and clothes were carefully arranged. A bright blue tarp was stretched overhead, shading them from the glaring sun. Emma checked the yard sale signs one last time, hoping their neighbors would stop by. Jacob opened the garage door wide, revealing more items stacked inside, with a small pathway to the house's back entrance. "Let's make this fun," he said, putting on a smile. Emma nodded, already imagining the bustling weekend ahead. Traffic was steady. Some neighbors wandered over, browsing and chatting. Emma loved seeing the mix of curiosity and nostalgia in their eyes. Old board games, vintage lamps, stacks of books. Children tugged at their parents to buy toys. Jacob manned the cash box while Emma greeted visitors. The day passed quickly, filled with laughter and bargaining. But as afternoon shadows grew longer, Emma noticed a man lingering near the garage. He was tall, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, hands shoved into pockets. Something about him felt off, not threatening but unsettling. "Hey, do you need help finding something?" Emma called. He shook his head and smiled faintly. "Just looking, thanks." She tried to shake the unease, focusing on a group of kids picking out toys. At about 6, the sale slowed. Emma and Jacob began packing away the unsold items. The stranger was still there, now leaning against a fence a few houses down, watching. "Should we ask him to leave?" Emma whispered to Jacob. Jacob glanced over. "Maybe just wait till he moves on." But the man didn't. When the last few neighbors left, he disappeared briefly. Emma felt a shiver. "Let's close up." They locked the main house doors and pulled the garage door halfway down, but forgot to lock the door between the garage and the house, thinking it was safe inside. Hours later, as they watched a movie on the couch, the sudden creak of the kitchen door opening froze Emma's heart. Jacob was up in an instant. Did you hear that? They crept toward the sound, only to catch a glimpse of a shadow moving swiftly past the kitchen window. Emma grabbed Jacob's hand. Someone's inside. The man had slipped in through the garage door and was now somewhere in their home. Panic surged. They backed away silently, locking themselves in the bedroom and dialing 911. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the phone, whispering into it. "Yes, we're locked in the bedroom. I think someone's inside the house. Please hurry." Jacob paced back and forth, every creak and groan of the old house sending his heart racing. "I can't believe this is happening. We just had a yard sale today. How did he even get in?" Emma swallowed hard. "The garage door. We pulled it down but didn't lock the door to the house. I thought it was safe. The garage is usually locked from the outside." Jacob stopped pacing and looked at her. "We never thought to lock that door. We treated it like part of the house, not an entrance." They stayed quiet, listening intently. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoed faintly through the hallway outside their door. Emma pressed her back against the bedroom door. "Do you think he knows we're here?" Jacob shook his head, though he wasn't sure. "Maybe not. Or maybe he's waiting for us to come out." Her breath hitched. "We need to stay put. Police said they're 5 minutes away. Try to stay calm." The minutes dragged on, heavy and thick. The only sounds were the distant hum of traffic outside and the faint rustling somewhere in the hallway. Emma's mind raced, picturing worst-case scenarios. Was he armed? What did he want? Robbery? Worse? Jacob sat down on the bed, running his hands through his hair. "Why would someone hide in our garage all day? It's been hours since the sale ended." Emma thought back to the man by the fence. "I don't know. Maybe he thought the house was empty. Maybe he planned to come back and steal something after dark." Jacob nodded slowly. "That makes sense." Suddenly, a loud thump echoed from below. The basement. Emma jumped. "What was that?" Jacob's face went pale. "I think he's in the basement." Jacob carefully moved to the window and peeked out. The street was quiet. A few cars parked along the curb. No sign of police yet. "Okay, we need a plan," Jacob said quietly. "If he's in the basement, that's 1 floor down. The back door's locked, right?" Emma checked the door handle. "Yes, locked. The basement door is near the kitchen, right? He might have come in through the garage, then down." Jacob nodded. "We can't go out that way." Emma's phone buzzed. It was a message from the 911 dispatcher. "Units arriving. Stay inside and keep the door locked." Relief flooded them, but the fear remained. Suddenly, the footsteps started again, this time upstairs, closer to their bedroom. Emma grabbed the baseball bat they kept near the bed. Jacob found a heavy flashlight. The doorknob rattled. "Stay calm," Jacob whispered. Emma tightened her grip. The knob turned slowly, then stopped. A voice, low and unfamiliar, called out, "I don't want to hurt you." Emma's voice trembled. "Who are you? Why are you here?" No answer. The doorknob stopped moving. They heard the footsteps retreat down the hallway. Sirens wailed outside. Police cars pulled up, flashing red and blue lights cutting through the night. Jacob opened the door carefully and stepped into the hallway. "They're here." Emma's legs shook as they emerged into the living room. Officers swept through the house calling out. One officer shouted, "We found him. Basement." In the basement, they found a man crouched behind some boxes, disheveled and sweaty. His eyes darted nervously. Officer Ramirez cuffed him and asked, "Why did you break in?" The man mumbled, I was cold. I needed a place to stay. I didn't mean to scare anyone." Emma and Jacob exchanged looks. The relief was palpable, but the shock lingered. The next day, neighbors expressed sympathy and curiosity. Emma told Mrs. Henderson, "We never imagined something like this would happen here." Mrs. Henderson nodded. "It's scary how people can hide in plain sight." Jacob called a locksmith to change the locks and install an alarm system. "We're not taking any chances." Emma sighed. I thought our neighborhood was safe. Now I feel like we have to watch our backs. Jacob pulled her close. We'll get through this. Together. That night, as Emma lay in bed, she stared at the locked door to the garage. The place they once considered an extension of their home had become a reminder of vulnerability. But she knew one thing. They would never let their guard down again. Claire Benson's Saturday afternoon started like any other in the quiet outskirts of Willow Creek, a small town nestled amid rolling fields and thick woods. She had moved here 3 years ago, drawn by the promise of peace and wide open spaces, an escape from the noise and chaos of city life. The Benson family farm sat on 5 acres, bordered by a patchwork of forest and neighbors who mostly kept to themselves. Claire loved the silence, but today something pulled her curiosity away from the comfort of her porch swing. As she drove down the gravel lane toward home after picking up groceries, a weathered wooden sign caught her eye. Yard sale. This way. It was nailed to a crooked post beside the road, its letters roughly painted in bright red. Yard sales were rare here. People usually preferred online selling or trading within the community. This was the first in months, if not years. She hesitated, then turned the wheel toward the side street the sign pointed to. The road narrowed quickly, lined on either side by tall pines and dense undergrowth. The sun was low, shadows lengthening across the cracked pavement. Her phone buzzed in the passenger seat, but she ignored it, eyes fixed on the road. Maybe I'll find some hidden treasure, she murmured to herself, a small smile breaking through the quiet of the car. The street dead-ended after a short mile, with only 3 houses spaced far apart. The second-to-last house was the one hosting the sale. It was a modest, single-story cottage with peeling white paint and a sagging porch. The front yard was wide but unkempt, grass overgrown and spotted with clumps of wildflowers. Claire parked beside the curb, noting that no other cars were there. She grabbed her tote bag and stepped out, the crunch of gravel underfoot loud in the still air. A cool breeze rustled through the pines, carrying the faint scent of damp earth. She walked slowly toward the driveway that stretched narrow and long to the left of the house. Beyond it, just before the edge of the woods, she spotted a scatter of items set out on the grass: lamps with frayed cords, chipped ceramic figurines, mismatched chairs, and framed pictures that had clearly seen better days. "Hello?" Claire called softly. "Is anyone here?" No answer. The only sound was the distant call of a blue jay and the occasional rustle of leaves. She wandered closer, scanning the objects with mild interest. Most looked like things someone wanted to clear out quickly, but one small painting caught her eye, a landscape of a foggy riverbank, the colors muted and somber. As she reached to pick it up, a faint noise from the woods behind her made her freeze. It was subtle at first, a soft crack like a twig snapping underfoot. Then a low murmur, almost indistinguishable from the whisper of the wind. Claire turned slowly, eyes darting between the dense trees. She thought she caught a glimpse of a figure moving between the trunks, tall, shadowy, almost blending with the forest. Her heart skipped a beat. "Hello?" She tried again, voice firmer this time. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it stepped out slightly into a patch of fading sunlight. A man, maybe in his late 40s, with a gaunt face and hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through the gloom. Claire's stomach tightened. The man didn't smile or acknowledge her presence. He just watched, expressionless. Feeling a shiver run down her spine, Claire took a step back. "I'm just looking at the sale," she said quickly, forcing calm. "Is this your place?" No answer. The man took a slow step forward. Claire's breath hitched. She glanced toward her car parked at the street's edge. She didn't want to seem rude, but something about this felt wrong. "I think I'll head back now," she said, turning around. As she walked briskly toward the driveway, the man followed silently, his pace steady, eyes locked on her. Claire's mind raced. Was he homeless? Was he dangerous? She'd heard stories of break-ins and thefts in the area, though nothing had happened close to her. Reaching the driveway's end, she stopped, facing him. "Are you okay?" she asked, hoping to diffuse whatever tension was there. The man's mouth twitched as if to speak, but no sound came. Then he took a step closer. Claire's pulse thundered in her ears. She turned sharply and hurried toward her car. Unlocking the door with trembling hands, she slid inside, locked the doors, and started the engine. From the window, she saw the man now standing at the edge of the street, staring after her without moving. Claire didn't wait to see what he'd do next. She backed out quickly and drove home, heart pounding, every shadow on the road seeming to shift and grow. Later that night, scrolling through local news on her phone, Claire froze at a headline. Man arrested for assault after yard sale robbery attempt. The photo was grainy, but the man's face was unmistakably the one she had seen that afternoon. A surge of relief and dread mixed inside her. She had been mere minutes away from a dangerous encounter she might not have escaped. Claire sat back on her couch, the glow of her phone screen casting shadows across the room. Her hands trembled slightly, the image of the man's hollow eyes etched in her mind. She scrolled through the article again. Local man 46, arrested after violent confrontation at a yard sale on Pine Ridge Lane. Victim escaped with minor injuries. Police advise residents to be cautious. She blinked hard, trying to shake the creeping unease. She hadn't even realized how close she'd come to danger. Just minutes earlier, she'd been standing in that yard, surrounded by silent furniture and scattered memories, oblivious to how precarious the situation was. Her husband, Mark, looked up from his book beside her. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Claire swallowed. "There was a yard sale today." I stopped to look. There was no one around, just stuff on the grass. Then I saw a man in the woods behind the house. He didn't say a word. He followed me when I started to leave. I don't know, Mark. Something felt really off. Mark closed his book and moved closer, concern darkening his features. "Did you call the police?" "No," Claire said quietly. "I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. But now I'm not sure I should have gone there at all." Mark reached out, taking her hand. "You did the right thing getting away. Maybe someone else called it in." She nodded, but the knot in her stomach tightened. The next morning, Claire found herself driving past Pine Ridge Lane again, this time with Mark beside her. The street was eerily quiet in the harsh daylight, the house where she'd stopped looking abandoned, the yard sale items gone. "Do you want me to call the sheriff's office?" Mark asked. Claire hesitated. "I don't know. I just want to make sure people around here know what happened. Maybe warn them." They stopped near the corner, and Claire's gaze drifted toward the dense woods beyond the empty yard. She imagined the man lurking there, silent and watching, his dark eyes fixed on the trees. "We should be careful," Mark said softly. "If someone like that's out here, no one's really safe." Claire swallowed the lump in her throat. "I guess that's what I was afraid of." That night, Claire couldn't shake the feeling she was being watched. The windows in their farmhouse faced the woods, and every crack and whisper of wind sent her heart racing. Mark tried to reassure her. "It's just your imagination." The man's behind bars now, but Claire wasn't convinced. Over the following week, Claire became increasingly uneasy. Each time she passed Pine Ridge Lane, she felt eyes on her, shadows slipping just beyond her vision. The town's peaceful facade seemed to crack under the weight of fear. One afternoon, as she walked their golden retriever Rusty near the edge of the woods, she heard footsteps behind her, deliberate, slow. She quickened her pace, heart pounding. "Rusty, come on," she called, glancing nervously over her shoulder. No reply. Turning sharply, she saw a figure retreating into the trees. It was a man, tall and thin, wearing a dark jacket that blended with the shadows. "Hey!" Claire called, voice trembling. The man vanished among the pines. Claire's hands shook. She knew then that the danger wasn't over. Someone was still watching, waiting. Back at home, she shared everything with Mark. "We need to call the sheriff," he said firmly. But Claire hesitated again. The last time she'd spoken to the police, they'd dismissed her concerns, said it was probably just a prankster or local kid. "I don't want to make things worse," she whispered. Mark's jaw tightened. "Keeping quiet won't keep you safe." That night, Claire sat by the window, clutching a flashlight. Outside, the woods seemed alive with silent whispers, and every rustle made her jump. Days later, the mailman brought a letter addressed to Claire, no return address. Inside, a single typed line: "You shouldn't have come here." Her blood ran cold. Mark immediately called the sheriff's department. Officers promised to patrol the area more frequently. But the letters kept coming, each one more threatening than the last. Claire knew now. The man from the yard sale wasn't done with her. He was still out there somewhere in the shadows of the woods, watching, waiting to finish what he started. I still remember the first few days after moving into the small, quiet neighborhood on Maple Street. It was early spring, just as the trees were beginning to bud, and the air had that fresh, slightly crisp feel that promised warmer days ahead. I had accepted a job in the nearby town, and renting a small house here was the most practical choice. It was a modest place, nothing fancy, but it was mine. My first real step toward independence. I was nervous about living alone for the first time, but the neighborhood seemed peaceful enough. The houses were older but well kept, and most of the lawns had fresh flowers planted in neat rows. On my first day, I hadn't met any neighbors yet, but I smiled politely when passing by people out walking dogs or tending to their gardens. Maple Street had about a dozen homes, clustered closely enough that you could hear your neighbors if you listened carefully, but still enough distance to feel private. My closest neighbor was the house directly across from mine. A single-story brick house with faded white curtains and a small porch, where an old rocking chair sat motionless. I had noticed the blinds always pulled shut during the day, and the porch light remained off long after sunset. I thought it was odd, but I reasoned maybe the people who lived there just liked their privacy. A few weeks after moving in, I noticed flyers taped to telephone poles and mailbox posts along the street. One of the neighbors was having a yard sale the coming weekend, and it seemed like the whole block was invited. I thought it would be a good chance to meet people and maybe find some cheap household items. The yard sale was at a quaint blue house 2 doors down from the brick house across the street. The woman who lived there, Mrs. Harper, was in her late 60s. She had kind eyes and a warm smile. When I arrived on Saturday morning, the street was bustling with people. Children ran between the sale tables and neighbors chatted, laughing in the sun. Mrs. Harper greeted me immediately. "You must be new to the street," she said, her voice cheerful. "I'm Gladys Harper. If you want to look around, feel free. We've got a little bit of everything." I smiled back. "Thanks, Mrs. Harper. I'm Claire. I just moved in last month." As I browsed through the piles of clothes and old books, I felt a little more at ease. Talking to Mrs. Harper was comforting, and I found myself relaxing despite the nerves that had kept me on edge since moving. Then, while shifting my gaze from the rack of secondhand jackets, I caught movement across the street. From the window of the brick house directly opposite mine, I saw a man watching me. He was tall, thin, and had a pale face that seemed almost too still to be natural. His eyes were fixed on me, unblinking. I froze. I hadn't noticed anyone living there before, but now I wondered who he was. My heart sped up, but I forced myself not to look away too quickly. Instead, I kept my head down, pretending to be interested in a stack of old magazines. Minutes later, I dared to glance up again. The man was still there, staring at me. "Mrs. Harper," I said quietly, "do you know who lives over there?" She glanced toward the brick house and frowned. "That's the Matthews place. Last I heard, it's just one guy. Not much of a neighbor, really. Keeps to himself. Some say he's got a bit of a past." "A past?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Mrs. Harper hesitated. "Let's just say he's been in trouble before. Nothing serious, but the kind of guy you don't want knocking on your door late at night." I swallowed hard, suddenly feeling exposed. Thanks for letting me know. I tried to shake the uneasy feeling as I continued at the yard sale, picking out a few things. When I said goodbye to Mrs. Harper and started walking back to my house, I noticed the man was no longer in the window. But as I crossed Maple Street, I caught sight of him outside on his porch, pacing slowly. He didn't look away when he saw me. His eyes seemed to follow me as I hurried home. I locked the door behind me and stood with my back against it, trying to calm down. It was just a man who probably didn't mean any harm. But the pit in my stomach said otherwise. That night I barely slept. At 2 a.m., I was startled awake by a sharp, rhythmic knocking at my front door. My pulse jumped to my throat. I peered through the peephole and saw him, standing there motionless, looking straight at the door as if he expected me to open it. The porch light cast an eerie glow, outlining his shadow on the welcome mat. My hands shook as I stepped back from the door. I didn't answer. After a few more knocks, he turned and walked away slowly. I sat on the floor and pressed my head to the cold wood of the door. The silence that followed was almost worse than the knocking. The next day, I was determined to find out more about the man. I approached Mrs. Harper during the afternoon and asked if she knew anything else. "Not much," she said, eyes wary. "His name's Victor Matthews. He's lived here off and on for years. People say he used to be in and out of jail, mostly for petty crimes and some assault charges. Not the kind you want living across the street when you're alone." Her words confirmed my fears. The days after were filled with moments of quiet dread. Sometimes I'd catch him watching from a window. Other times I'd see him lurking near the edge of his yard, sometimes just standing still and staring in my direction. One evening I was sitting on the couch reading when I heard footsteps outside my front window. I peered out and saw him, standing just a few feet away, looking directly inside. He didn't move when I blinked or when I pulled the curtains. He just stood there unmoving. I backed away and called the police. When the officers arrived, they spoke to Victor on his porch. He insisted he was just out for a walk and that he hadn't been near my house. But when the police walked back to my place, they found fresh footprints on my front lawn and scratch marks on the side of my house. "Wrong address," Victor told them flatly. The officers seemed skeptical but left after giving him a warning. I started installing new locks and security cameras but still felt unsafe. Every night the fear that he might come back grew stronger. Luckily, after a month, Victor moved out. No one knew where. And the quiet on Maple Street returned. I still wonder what his intentions were. Why did he keep watching? Why did he come knocking in the dead of night? I'm just glad I moved away before things could get worse. Over the next few weeks, I stayed extra cautious. I double-checked locks every night and kept my phone close. The late-night knocking never happened again, but I often caught fleeting glimpses of Victor from my windows. Sometimes he was just standing outside, staring blankly, sometimes pacing near his driveway. He never tried to talk to me again, but that feeling of being watched lingered. One evening I saw moving vans outside his house. The next day, he was gone. I never asked Ruth why or where he moved, and she never offered. A part of me was relieved, but I also felt uneasy that I never really understood him, or why he had fixated on me. Months passed, and the neighborhood slowly became just a place where I lived, not a place that made me nervous. But every now and then, when I walked past that empty house across the street, I felt a chill creep up my spine, like I was being watched by eyes no longer there. I never reported Victor again. The police seemed to think it was just a misunderstanding, but I knew better. Some people don't just leave. Sometimes they wait, hidden behind quiet windows, biding their time. And maybe that's the scariest part of all.